Welcome to Harlem Capital's More Equity podcast. We're so glad you're here. Each season, we'll be exploring a new aspect of the startup and VC landscape by speaking to founders, investors, and top industry leaders.
Welcome to our second episode. Today, I'm joined by two incredible people, and I'm super excited to dive deeper with Maria Gutierrez Peñaloza and Ana Carolina Mexia Ponce, the founding partners of Nido Ventures, a seed-stage fund focused on investing in the next generation of Latino trailblazers in Latin America and the U.S. To date, Nido has backed incredible companies like Sellrs, Morado, Yuno, Palenca, and more. Let's jump into our second episode. Fantastic. Well, hello, Maria and Caro, the founding partners at Nido Ventures. Huge welcome to the Harlem Capital More Equity podcast. I've been so looking forward to this one and super pumped to have you on as part of our Diverse Emerging Manager series. Thank you again for joining.
We're so happy to be here. Thank you for having us, Gabby.
Thank you so much for having us. I think that this podcast is incredible. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Of course. I mean, it's been so fun getting to know you both since we got introduced through Amanda, who's a former Harlem Capital intern. So shout out to the community for continuing to bring great people together. And I know I've gotten to know you guys, but would love for the audience to hear a little bit more about you. So can you share a little bit about your backgrounds, where you guys grew up, what you did before you launched Nido Ventures? Would love to kick off with the story.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead first, Caro?
Amazing. Yes, I can go ahead. So hi, everyone. I'm Caro. I was born and raised in Mexico. I then came to the U.S. where I came to Stanford. I studied computer science. So I've always been very geeky, very into technology. And I think a little like the majority of my path, I thought that I was going to become a traditional entrepreneur. So I decided to go work at a big tech company to really get that technical experience. So I worked at LinkedIn as a software engineer. And then during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to work for a fitness startup in Mexico, which was an incredible experience because I was able to like really reconnect with LatAm. And now, as you may know, we are at Stanford GSB now. And I say we because Maria and I have pretty similar backgrounds in terms of our trajectory. And yeah, so at GSB and decided to start Nido after having angel invested for a year in the region. But yeah, this is a little bit of my background, and always my North Star has been gender equity and just finding ways in which either with my own experience or with what I'm building, I can help create change in that world.
Always love to hear you tell your story, Caro, even though I hear it several times a day. But so I'm Maria, also born and raised in Mexico City. I met Caro when we were in undergrad. I studied another engineering. It's called Management Science and Engineering. It's basically a mix of a bunch of different engineering types. So once I left undergrad, I decided to go the big tech route and try to get some operational experience there. So I worked at Tesla first and then at Apple on the supply chain operations side. I was buying semiconductors, completely different world to what I'm doing today, but trying to find this kind of intersection between technology, engineering, business all together, which is what I really love to do. So being there, I always knew I wanted to start something on my own. I didn't know if I wanted to go back to LatAm and do it or stay here for a few more years and build something here. I think the longer you stay in the US, the harder it just gets to go back. So I applied to MBA program to just figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, take 2 years off and then just think about it. And I got in and then the pandemic started. So I decided to defer that for a year. And I went to Mexico City. I worked at a startup called Backbone Systems. It's a compliance automation engine for financial institutions in Mexico. It was a 5-person startup, so completely different world. I actually just learned that they're at 25 employees now. So that's very cool to know. But at the time, I was basically one of 5, doing a little bit of everything. So some strategy, marketing, product, helping CEOs get the thing moving. And I really loved the impact that I could have on a small team and also in the region. Just working in Spanish again was very interesting. And from there, I realized, there just weren't enough women starting companies, and, my clients were all men. All the people I talked to all day were men, suppliers, etc. And I just wanted to see that kind of shift and change within Mexico. So, basically that's what's got me more excited about investing in the region and doing more things to move the needle forward.
Fantastic. Well, a few things there. I'm also an engineer, so love having more women engineers just in tech and BC or just CDC in general. Super important. And I think that what I loved about like both of your stories is that you both like knew you wanted to start something, like trying to figure out exactly what. I love that it formed as the journey kind of took shape. And Kara, you mentioned like your North Star has always been gender equity. Maria, you saw there weren't enough women starting companies and startups in Mexico. And so I guess I'd love to hear how those experiences and that North Star, like how did that then start to lead you to starting Nido or thinking about, okay, getting into that investor seat? Like what was that sort of early thought process like?
Yeah, I think the thought process, and I would like to add, I think that the thought process has really evolved. I think in the beginning we were like thrilled to start a fund that was going to be focused on women. We were like, I think this is what we want to do. Let's focus on investing in women. And we quickly realized after our experience as angel investors in LatAm that that was going to just be, it was going to be incredibly hard to be able to prove ourselves, and also to be able to like invest in, because there was just not enough pipeline. Like 80% of the decks that we look at have no women in them. So not even no female founders, but no women in them. So for us, this was like a huge realization. And I think that also in the process of angel investing, we quickly realized of just how different the opportunities that are available in Silicon Valley are to those that are available in Latin America, and for Latinos in the US in general. So for us, I think that even though, of course, gender equity will always be our North Star, and it's something that we'd like lived and breathed, I think another part of the things that really informed how we think about Nido is actually a lot of the things that we've been really lucky and that are really grateful to have had, which is the opportunity to have lived in Silicon Valley for the past 10 years, the opportunity to be engineers. So through this, this is what has really like informed our thesis, which is around investing in Latinos, both in Latin America and in the US. And I think that we will forever have a really like strong eye for female founders. I think like this is something that we look for, but we realized that in this first fund, it would be really hard to have a mandate to just focus on that.
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I guess your point about like how different those opportunities are, like it is very stark. And so be able to be a fund focused on Latinos in the US and on Latin America gives you that opportunity to fill that gap. Can you share a little bit more about like, okay, you both coming together? I guess when did you start realizing that you might want to become co-founders or founding partners together at Nido? What were those early conversations like? Would love to like be in the room a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were actually talking about this 2 days ago, but this whole thing started, we were talking amongst friends. Let's start doing angel investing. I thought, who's the best person that I could do this with? And I immediately thought of Caro. So I called her. I was like, Caro, I think we have this opportunity with a couple of other friends to just start doing some angel investing in the region. We're going to be writing small checks, but the idea is that the 5 of us have very different backgrounds, and we just want to put that together in order to start helping out some of the companies that are in Mexico. And the idea was to do, it was a side project that we were going to be working on while Caro and I figured out what we wanted to do in the MBA program. And the more we worked together, the more we wanted to work on something together or build, be co-founders. So we started thinking about different startup ideas. And that was always part of our conversation while we were at GSB. But, we were spending more and more time working on Nido and working on these processes. And we love talking to entrepreneurs. So how do we grow this and how do we make this bigger? Even as we were just thinking about the angel community. And Caro and I, we've been really close since undergrad. But I think that, through this whole angel experience, it was a great way of figuring out whether really close friends could work together, because it doesn't always work out. So for us, it was a more, low stakes. It was our personal capital. We could stop whenever we wanted. We could decide to invest in something that had nothing to do with our thesis if we wanted as well. So I think that piece was just a very good way of testing out the waters. And the more we work together, the more we realize we complement each other really well. We love hanging out, and I think the lines are not completely blurred between being founders and friends, which is honestly great, because we're very passionate about what we're doing. But yeah, I think at least how I see it, it was a very natural transition to, yeah, we're building this together, and suddenly we just were raising a fund.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think just the only thing I would add is like there's no way that I would have been able to do this by myself. Like no part of this would I have had the confidence to do it, would have had the like motivation to do it. I think one thing that has really like opened up my eyes in the past few months is just seeing how working with someone who's like equally as motivated and equally as like driven can really help you in the process of finding motivation. And I think that this is something that's like not often talked about, but when you're a founder, like you are setting your own goals, you are setting your own tasks. It's like pretty overwhelming. I think also in VC in general, it's like so broad that it's sometimes like, okay, am I doing things right? And just being able to have someone by my side who I can be like, look, today I'm struggling with this and I need help just trying to define this. I need an accountability buddy. And this is like an innate accountability buddy. And I think that has been just really, really incredible, because I just am motivated to see the amazing things that she's doing, and that motivates me to also do amazing things. So that has been something that I really, really have loved in the process.
That is so cool. I want to kind of dig in a little bit more there. To your point that like it's incredible having someone by your side, but you can push each other, build with. Before this conversation, I asked one of your investor friends, something about you, and she said that you guys have this incredible balance of EQ and IQ. And so it seems like as co-founders, you really push each other, make each other better, and are super balanced. I guess to the flip side, or I'm curious, like, what does it look like when you're pushing each other? What are some of those opportunity areas that you're trying to get each other to work on? Is it more fun related about how you work with companies? Just curious about, what does that look like on a day-to-day?
I think the first thing that comes to mind, and then for me, it's just like, there's things that come more innately to each one of us. So I'm like much more about like process and like making sure that everything is like, we have a specific process for everything, and I try to make it as efficient as possible. So I like try to build automations and that, and like making those connections of like how to build this really quick, like really come easy to me. But there's a lot of other like technical fun things that don't come as easily to me. So I think I connect a lot with like when founders are talking about like product and whatever, like I'm like, okay, I get this. But then sometimes when I'm like, I don't know, looking at contracts, I'm like, okay, it's going to take me a while. And I think that Maria definitely pushes me to be like, okay, let's look through this together. Let's like make sure that we understand. And I know that she understands. And I know that like, it's much more to like, just make sure that I'm like going through the things and understanding them at my own pace, which I think has been really incredible.
Yeah, and to add there, I think one of the big things that, are particular to VC is that it's a very, very social job. And so even if you are a complete extrovert and you're very comfortable in social situations, the social piece is a lot more overwhelming that anyone can ever explain. And there's always going to be an additional event to go to, someone else that you can talk to in a day. So it's just, it's hard sometimes to keep up with the pace or pace yourself as well, right? So I think that Caro and I both have found, that balance in each other of, what, this event, I think we should go together. This one, I think you should just, you take it, I'll take this other thing on. So just the whole thing about balancing within the fund has been, it's obviously challenging, but I think that piece we've also been able to help each other out, because sometimes just when you're drained with energy is no worries, either I'll take it on or let's go, the both of us will be there together. And I think at that just has been incredible, especially sometimes when you look around in a room and you're the only person that looks the way that you do. It just gets a lot more, complicated. So just having someone by your side that is, looks exactly like you, is always exciting. So I think that particularly on that side, Caro and I are both pretty extroverted, but still this job just requires us to have that on max 24/7. So
Totally. Like, I feel like VC and as a startup, like there's always something else you can do. There's always more, and there's always another person, and you never know, because there's so much serendipity in our work, that like the next conversation could be, this huge unlock for your portfolio, for your fund, or what have you. So I think having that balance, having that person along the way, I think even looking at portfolio companies and their co-founder relationships, like that's super critical. So I love that. I kind of want to go back a little bit to talking about the fund itself. So we talked about like the origin story, you both coming together, how you guys work well together. I'm curious about like the fund strategy and sort of LP fundraising process. How did you guys start finding your first LPs once you made the journey from angel fund to Nido? And how did they absorb your strategy as you started to share that?
Yeah, I think the incredible thing about having done it as, angels with personal capital was that we were able to experiment a lot on the different things that we wanted to start looking at in LatAm. So the first thing that we started creating was just, what's our thesis? What do we think is the future in Latin America? What do we like investing in? And I think that as the situation, or, time went on, we realized that there weren't many technical investors in LatAm. So we saw that we had a niche not only in the pre-seed stage, where there's not a lot of institutionals that are going at that stage either, but also, the fact that we were both technical and, obsessed with diversity made us really different. So that's the first thing that we focused on. Thesis, so pre-seed, seed companies in Spanish-speaking LatAm and the Hispanic/Latino community in the US, and only tech companies. So we started ruling out all of these asset heavy models, because what we know is technology. So we started with the invest in what you know kind of idea. And then from there, we defined fund size depending on the, with the model. We did a model, looked at the companies that we wanted to go into, what did our check size need to be able to go into these companies, especially the very early ones. And kind of from there, we landed on the number of the size of the fund, which is $15 million, 15. And then from there, the fundraising strategy was, we'll start with friends and family. And then from there, moving on to friends of friends and people that are in our network and community that already know us or know about us and can at least, vouch for who we are as people and, hard workers, etc. And then from there, we'll be able to move on to the harder conversations, which are people that have no idea who you are. So that's, I don't know, I'll let Caro take it from there, but that was kind of how we started looking at it.
Yeah. And I think something cool that we did in the beginning that I think for Maria and I, we don't come from a venture background. And I think that sometimes, of course, that makes it harder, but sometimes I think it gives us the opportunity to be super creative. So in the beginning, what we did was that we hosted these pitch sessions, and we would just invite all of the friends that we think would be interested in investing, both our friends and our families, and just be let's make this official and let's practice. So we would literally host 3 or 4 sessions. No, I think more, maybe 5 or 6 a week. And then we would just have links where people could sign up to them and they would show up. And we would just do the presentation. I remember the first one we did, it was chaotic. We sounded like robots. And there's literally that's just robot. Not how we ever, literally, it's not how we speak, but we were both just so nervous and just, but it was incredible because we were able to receive feedback from people that wanted us to succeed, it's people that are going to bet on you. If they had money, they're going to bet on you no matter what, because they know you and know how hard you work, but they're also going to give you the feedback that you need to be able to get through. So I think that for us was just an incredible strategy to get just because I do think that you just need to get the number of pitches done under your belt, once you've done it enough times, it just becomes so much more natural. You find edges. It took us a while to understand wow, like the technology aspect of like our backgrounds is something that like really resonates with a lot of LPs. And that honestly, it's like what we didn't even think of that as a differentiator because in Silicon Valley it's so common, but we hadn't even realized that like for Latinos, this is not like for people investing in Latinos, this is not necessarily the case. And we were like, oh, there's something here, and like the more you do it, the better you get at it. But yeah, that was like the easier slash I would say easier, but it was also like very nerve wracking, right? Because it's like at the beginning, you're like, I'm gonna embarrass myself in front of these people that like already trust me and like, that like think highly of me. But I think it was the best choice which could have ever done.
And it's for your
And
heart and
that
soul.
from there, yeah. And what was cool about that was that started opening up to like more like friends of friends, and then we like quickly shifted away from that model of doing pitches with multiple people because it wasn't like a good way to actually like move the process through. But I don't know, it's something that I would highly recommend in the beginning when you're just trying to get the practice out. Because we also did get some checks out of that. So I do think that it was worth it.
That's great. I love that as a hack. I'll quickly summarize, I guess, for everyone listening. So it seems like start small, start with your initial network, people who know you, trust you, or and believe in what you're doing. Get the practice in, get the reps in, like get the feedback, and then find your edge of the things that like resonate with the audience, resonate with potential investors, because they'll be your next sort of referrals to the next set of people, and it just kind of spirals from there. So that's really cool. I love that. I guess I'm curious, like. That's a huge lesson. What are some of the other lessons that you learned along the way? So maybe once you got outside of that initial segment, you got into that first or second set of introductions to potential LPs. What were some of the other big lessons during the fundraising process?
I think one of the big things that we realized, and I think this was one of the best advice that we've gotten, and two people that are experienced in VC have said similar things. So I'll kind of quote what both of these people said. But one of them was, it's your first fund, expect a lot of no's, and don't let that get to you. Like, it's totally normal. And then this other person said, if 95% of the people you're talking to don't say no, you're not talking to enough people. So I think those were the two things that Garo and I thankfully had, in our head while we were going into this, because you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Some people don't even know what venture capital is. It might be a very risky asset for them. Some more experienced investors have a lot of, questions for emerging managers. Some have, more mandates. They don't invest in first-time funds, so they want to talk to you, but then they just kind of want you to call them once you're raising your second or third fund. So I think just going into this whole experience, knowing that we were expecting most people to say no was the best way to go about it, because there's some days that are very hard as you're fundraising, and it's sometimes just the energy's gone because you've done a lot of these, and some weeks you get a lot of no's, and that's just kind of the reality, which made us a lot more empathetic with entrepreneurs as well on our end, because I think it's very similar to what they go through, especially once you've gone through more due diligence processes. It gets even more heartbreaking to get the no's. So I think that piece was incredible to know beforehand. But once you get there, I think the other thing, the first close, we expected it was going to go a lot faster than it did. So I would just, the other advice I'd say is plan a lot of time for your first close and be patient with it, because, LPs, for whatever reason, sometimes take longer to sign. You're trying to get the hang of it, explaining the contracts. Some people sign in less than 20 minutes and they're good. They have no questions, which is great. But a lot of LPs have a lot of questions as well. So that's the other thing I'd say.
I love that. And
what do you think, Caro?
Yeah, go ahead, Gareth.
No.
Yeah, no, I think I would echo everything Maria said. And then just like knowing, I think like knowing that you're going to have to become every role, like by starting a fund, you will just have your accounting, and you are a CTO, and you are a CEO. Like, at the end of the day, you're also building a company, and there's like so many things that come with that. And I think that that's like what we actually also really love about this is the fact that we're like creating a company. It's a company that has a culture, and like, but there's all of these moving pieces that you have to focus on. And I think as part of the fundraising process, what's been really incredible is that you're able to develop those because you have to constantly talk about those. So that's something that I would say is like, just know that in this process, like that it's much more than just like, this is the fund and this is the strategy. It's like all of the other things that are around that. But yeah, I think it's definitely been a hustle, and it will continue to be a hustle. But I think we both love it. It's just incredible. I think the last piece of advice is just like, even if people say no, like you get to meet incredible people. So like, even if like they're not a match for any reason, like you get to meet incredible people. And I think seeing it from that point of view has really helped when we do have those weeks when a lot of people are saying no.
Yeah, and gets you back to when those are the great weeks, and like that's you trying to, this is why we love what we're doing. But your point about like you have to do a little bit of everything totally resonates. Even here at Berlin Capital, like you as a partner, a founding partner, you're doing the legal, you're figuring out hiring, you're figuring out deals at the same time, you're fundraising. So it's really like the entire spectrum of everything. I do think one thing that's actually really similar in the Harlem Capital story, but also the Nido story, is that you guys launched the fund while in business school. And so I'm so curious, like how has that helped or hindered you guys in this journey? What have been the pros and cons of launching the fund while at Stanford?
I like keeping the good news for last, so I'm gonna start with the bad news, which is
Honest.
it's just time. It's honestly time. I think already as a venture capitalist, like the thing that you have is your time, and at the end of the day, like there's the million things that you could be doing, the million things that you could be doing better, but like you're constrained to time. And I think that like just being able to balance that is something that we talk about super often, because we are like, we know that's because we're not done yet, right? Like we graduate in June. So right now, like our plan as a company for the next few months is like really specific to how is this working while we are at school. Like we plan around, okay, are you taking more units? Am I taking a little less? Which classes can really inform what we're doing? So I think at the end of the day, just like the time part of it is what is harder. But honestly, like looking forward, like it's gonna be incredible once I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, I would say that that's like the hardest part, and I really hope that it prepares us to be really just like strict with how we manage our days. Because if not, what we ends up happening is that we just sleep less, and that's not good for us. So we are like really strict about, okay, this is what we want to accomplish today. This is how we're going to accomplish it, and like really set limits so that we're not like overblown with things every day. And I'll let Maria give the good news.
That's the good news.
I love it. Thanks, Caro. I think the incredible thing about business school is the people that you meet and the resources that you have around you are incredible. So some people have asked us, like, did you think about doing one of those emerging manager courses or things, that help you meet other emerging managers and things like that? And honestly, we never needed it. We have all of these people that have raised funds several times. People have worked in VC that have started companies, sold companies 3-4 times, founders that are professors or are within, a street or two of where we are. So the amount of people that you just have kind of as a resource is unbelievable. So I think that for us, that gave us a really big push to whenever we have, any questions, doubts, there's someone you can approach with them. We've gotten advice for fundraising, connections through school. The alumni database is incredible for us to tap into. And then while you're at school is so much easier to just run into people that can help out with Nido. We've met a ton of different founders as well. So it's a great way of just constantly getting a lot more deal flow and things that are coming out of both GSB and undergrad. So it's very easy to create events and just be at places where incredible things are happening all the time. And I think obviously once you graduate, you just lose the spontaneity of being on campus. You have to plan to come visit and meet with people, and people have to be available that day. So I think that just has been unbelievable with our whole process, and being able to plan your classes in the second year to really all focus on what you're building is incredible. So we're taking, an angel and VC class this quarter that, maybe 80% of the things that are on there you've seen, but that other 20% is so valuable to just hear from people that are experienced or have done a lot of research on the topic, to just help you better inform the way that you're building and your fund strategy and fundraising, etc.
Very cool.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add, is we took a VC class at the law school last spring, which was just insane and incredible because they made us look at many more legal documents that I ever thought I would look at in my life. But it was just such a good way, at least for me, who I'm again, as I mentioned, a little slower on this front, of just literally going term by term, and also just seeing the cases of a lot of really strange things happen in the venture capital world in the future, and just seeing these cases and going through how certain language in a contract could open the door so that this thing could happen in the future. That for me was just it's just incredible that we get the opportunity to do that, learn that while we're building is just really, really incredible.
Yeah. I think what I love in this is the time from learning to application and getting to do that cycle over and over again is supercharged in the business school setting a little bit. And you guys talked a lot. I'd love to get a little deeper into what, if you have any examples or stories of one of those standout moments where you might have learned something in the classroom or from a classmate or had a connection that you were immediately able to apply to Nido. Would love to hear if you have any of those kind of stories.
Yeah, I mean, I have an easy one, which is the connection to Harlem. We had been seeing Harlem a ton in different places, and we were super excited about what was going on at Harlem. And then we were literally in the Slack channel, does anyone know anyone at Harlem? And 3 people immediately responded, and that connection was made that day. So just being able to do that, and now we're here, now we have a super, super close relationship. And I think that that's just incredible. There's been almost no times where I send a question in the Slack and there's no one who has an answer, which I think is just it just blows my mind.
Yeah, and I'll tell another one. So I was, when I was starting to angel invest and things like that, the first book I was I need to read is Secrets of Sand Hill Road. I was this is going to explain everything I need to know about VC. And it actually is an incredible book. And I truly recommend that to any, people that are thinking about going into the VC world, or even if you're a founder, raising capital is a great way of just kind of getting a very high level view of a lot of the points that you need to know for contracts and fundraising, et cetera. But I read this book, then we took this VC law class where that was one of the textbooks of the class, the Secrets of Sand Hill Road book. And then Scott Kupor came in person to talk to the class. And he gave us one entire class was just taught by him. And at the end, Caro and I just went up to him, talked to him. He was I love what you guys are building. We should have a conversation afterwards. We had a Zoom with him. He helped us talk through fund strategy, the way that we were thinking about building, and this is a guy who's been doing it for such a long time that it was just incredible to get some validation as to the way that we were thinking about things. And in one day saying, okay, perfect. What we thought with our model works. This is the amount of companies we should invest in. Cool, perfect. So I think that things like that, where that just doesn't really happen outside of school, and these people are a lot less accessible when you're outside. So those two were incredible.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, and also an incredible book. I think between that and the Power Law, someone's got, their venture curriculum kind of set. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess one thing, thinking about current events in the market, it's clear everything is kind of going through this downturn. Venture funding's down. There's a lot of just challenges for later stage companies, and even for people fundraising sometimes. And so I'm curious, I guess, how has the market shift impacted the journey? How has it perhaps influenced how you're thinking about the fund over the next year?
I think the one of the I'll talk about good news first. I'll switch it around, but good news first is I think that last year things just were very inflated and people were raising money at very crazy valuations and valuations that are going to be very hard to keep up with, in the next coming months and years. So I think that just kind of that stabilization of valuations is really going to be a great thing for Nido and for people that are investing now, especially in emerging markets and particularly at the early stage. I think it's where it's less correlated to the macro environment. So in that, we're very excited. And then the other thing that we really looked at with the thesis and honed down in was we want to invest in companies that are solving real problems. So, problems that are so big in the Latin American society or the Latinos/Hispanics in the US society that are truly things that people are going to go for nonetheless, regardless of what market conditions are. I think that's, one of the things that we were looking at since the beginning because we're interested, in the impact that our companies have in these regions, but also, I think now is more important than ever to look at that. So those two things I think are good things about what's happening. But obviously, fundraising in these times has been difficult. The checks that we've been getting, I think we got as many yeses as we thought we would get, but the checks just have been smaller than the people, regularly or maybe a year ago could have committed to. So I think that piece has been complicated, convincing people that, you need to get your money into Latin America when, the crazy things are in the news every day and the Fed is hiking rates and, there's just a lot of uncertainty around things. I think it is even crazier when you don't understand the Latin American market or it seems foreign. So it just makes it seem even more foreign, right? When you're trying to really go in and sell this idea that, LatAm is the place to be in the next few years. So I think those are the things that I've seen in particular. And obviously, extensions, a lot of extension rounds, raising new funds new funding, has been complicated for our company. So just trying to figure out how to best help them navigate just having to be a little more tight with the way that they're spending. And I think it's frustrating for founders. So it's a hard thing to help on.
For sure. And one thing you mentioned that I want to drill down a little bit more on is what are some of those like enduring categories? Because I think you're right. Like the markets will always be cyclical. We're just going through one of these big massive shifts right now. We just went through one before, there will be one later. But it really is like fundamental technology that will sustain, that will really lift people regardless of category or sector. And so I'm actually curious, like, as you guys think about investing in Latin America and Latinos in the US, what are those categories that you're really excited about? And given your both technical investors, I'm curious, like, is there a particular lens you're taking for why those are the ones you're most pumped about?
I think one of the things that we focused on from business models is also what are the big problems that we see in LatAm and that are really keeping, the community behind. And I think that the access to quality, access and quality of healthcare, access and quality of education, access and quality of financial services are some of the big things that we've just seen as big problems that are keeping people from being able to sell, to work, to just live long, healthy lives. So we've been focusing on these kinds of things. So what are the technologies that we can bring to the region to really help, from the end of the supply chain to the final product? And a lot of these things come, with embedded lending. So we've been looking at a lot of models that are, B2B marketplaces that are just helping those that, need to buy supplies for work to be able to have access to financing, and things, especially in these moments where things are getting very complicated. We focused on a bunch of founders that also have technical experience, so are building better models to be able to provide the financing to be able to really take that on. On the healthcare side, I think that the problem with healthcare in Latin America is that it's an issue from the base of the pyramid all the way to the top. So the access to healthcare is a problem really everywhere. And I think that there's a lot of business models there that are trying to attack the problem. Certain taboo topics, particularly around females' health, for example, that we've liked to focus on to be able to just give women an avenue to be able to be healthy and be educated and go to their doctors. So business models like that we've liked. Yeah, so I think that, a lot of the things that we've looked at is how to make businesses the most asset light possible. So, just how technologies can push forward, really small sellers, or the little thing, like that tienditas, which are the people that are, selling different things on the streets. Like, how do we empower those people through technology, and just looking at the entire pyramid in LatAm to really help out. So I think it's been just different problems that we've identified that we want to look for business models that are able to solve them. And for us, technology is vital to be able to get on the other side. So
amazing. And within those categories, I guess, is there a recent investment that you can share and why you were so excited about investing in that company?
Yes, I'll talk about two different ones that'll kind of highlight both on the healthcare side and on the B2B marketplaces things I mentioned. So we invested in Mika, which is a B2B to B2B marketplace for dental supplies in LatAm. That's kind of where they're starting. It's an incredible Peruvian female founder. She's moving to Mexico to start this whole thing now. So we invested pre-product, pre-everything. But we are very bullish on what she's able to do. And basically, it's just bringing a lot more technology to a process that today requires, dentists and other medical professionals to be able to either spend hours a day trying to procure materials, having to, travel for hours to be able to get these materials. And this is just an incredible way to figure out how to give, all of the dentists in Latin America that big push. And it's interesting because Mexico is, I think, in the top 10 of the most dentists in the world. So things like that, where we just saw how, the market was ready for disruption. Then the other company that I think is really interesting is called Wellbe, founded by a Brazilian guy, but in Mexico, Eduardo. He's fantastic, incredible founder. I think I always say that he could sell ice to Eskimos. He's really good at what he does. And what he's building is a platform for occupational health in Mexico. So, if you're a company that has more than 100 employees, you need to have a doctor on site and a lot of medical records for all of your employees. All of this was previously done with, paperwork. So they just had entire rooms full of medical records for employees. Very inefficient way of having doctors on site.
Mm-hmm.
So he created this platform where everything is now technological. He's been able to connect and integrate all of the major labs, insurance providers, doctors, 24/7 video care, but they're not employed by Wellbe at all. So it's purely just a tech play, very asset light, that just has made really great partnerships. And I think that he's onboarding clients every week. So we're very excited with what he's doing.
Yeah,
as well.
those are like two very exciting companies. So congrats on the investments for sure.
Thank you.
And the last couple of questions. I think I've always been curious because names are really important to me. I think about like when we're naming things, it's how we make our work. It's how people remember us. It reflects, what we stand for. So I was curious, what led to naming the firm Nido Ventures?
So nido means nest in Spanish. So the way that we looked at it when we named it, and this was way back in the angel days, it was we wanted to be nesting companies. We wanted to be this place where companies could find comfort and also be able to hatch and grow. So we saw ourselves as a nido, and that's how it came to be.
I love
Yeah,
that.
and I think it's evolved in really beautiful ways in which when we're like looking at the like entire process of what it means to be a nest for companies. So I think that like the name happened because of that, but now a lot of other things have happened when we think about like, okay, we're a nest, what is the kind of things that we should provide? Like for us, it's like really important the portfolio companies are able to create community within themselves because we want this to be like a safe space. Also, when we talk to founders, we always say like, we want you to feel comfortable like coming to the nest and coming with the hard questions and being transparent. Like we are human too. We want to be able to help out with that. And I think that that's something that it just has really evolved in beautiful ways.
I love that. And it'll just like continue to grow. And, the first companies will leave the nest and the next will come in. And so
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. And thinking ahead, I guess, where do you guys see Nido Ventures 10 years from now?
Garo, do you want to
This is
try?
no, I think it's an incredible question. I think we have a really clear vision that we want to focus first on empowering Latinos. Like this is our goal for the near future because Maria think of Nido as our forever career, right? So thinking about the future is a little harder, but I think for the next 10 years we want to be a Latino focused fund with whatever that means as we evolve and see what happens to the market. But we just want to make sure that we are elevating Latinos. We're like at least in the two places that we are most comfortable with, which is Spanish speaking LatAm and the US. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, hopefully with another fund, hopefully with incredible exits. And yeah, just continuing to grow. And I think continuing to be a trailblazer in the Latino community. Hopefully mentoring a lot of other like women who are starting their own funds and hopefully just being able to create a lot of community around our nest.
Amazing. And then our last two rapid fire questions. The first one, and we did touch a little bit on a book that was really meaningful in the journey. But are there any other like one book or podcast that everyone looking to launch a fund should be listening to or read?
I really like the 20-minute VC podcast. I think it's a great way of just hearing VCs in a bunch of different stages. So the earlier VCs, people that are in the growth stage, how they think very differently, how you can go between one and the other, and just these stories of the creation of funds and how, in at least some of the episodes, they really talk about the hard things as well. So I think that those things have been incredible for us to just really know and prepare. So I loved that. But yeah, Secrets of Sand Hill Road, I think is the one book that really just made me excited about what I was doing and building and gave me a lot more confidence to talk about it more openly. So
Yeah, and I think for me, for people who are not coming from an operating background, how I built this podcast, I think just gives you just a flavor of what the experience of an entrepreneur can really look like and how crazy it can be. I think that's one. I don't think I listen to that as often nowadays, but I think it was something that I used to love to listen to. And that's when I kind of realized like, oh, this is our like incredible stories and I want to be a part of this. So that's the one that I would really recommend.
I dig it. I dig it. And then if you both weren't in VC, I guess what would you be doing today?
wow. What would I think for me is I definitely wanted to found something. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I probably would be building something in the healthcare space in Latin America.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think part of me like really wanted to become an entrepreneur, but part like a traditional entrepreneur, but like part of me really knew that that was not the like way. Like I just could not see myself being forced to build a company that has to scale really fast. Like I think the part that I love the most about building is being able to build something that is like aligned with my values and where I can really take, in the company itself, everything can be really crazy, but I just want to make sure that the people in the company are happy and that I'm like making that impact on the people who are like I'm impacting on every day. So yesterday was really funny because in one of the GSB classes, they were talking about search funds. And I actually it like made it like sparked a thought in me that maybe that could have been a different career choice where it's much more about like rebuilding a culture and like changing actually like the way that we're weighing which cultures work to be able to make companies work better. I think so. Maybe that could be it, or maybe an engineering manager at some tech company.
Yeah, but I guess and to your points, like what you guys brought up earlier, like entrepreneurship, wanting to build, wanting to create is so much who you are. So I'm not surprised that, in any alternate life path, you'd end up there too. Yeah. So thank you both so much for joining our podcast. It's been such a thrill getting to chat, and congrats again on everything you've built with Nido, and excited to see where it continues.
Thank you so much for having us, Gabby. Honestly, it's great to just always meet with some more incredible women in VC and, people in general that are doing trailblazing things in our industry. So thank you for having us and for existing.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think we both really look up to Harlem. And it's just been so incredible to be able to create this incredible relationship.
For sure. Excited to keep building together.